This is Joel Hicks. I am the chair of the Climate Action Commission, and we have set aside the hour before our Climate Action Commission to hold a public sustainability working group as a working group meeting to discuss several projects that we are in some stage of developing and use this as a convenient time to get updates on those projects. And I see we have several folks joined in, and in the order that we sort of went last time, I'll give an update as far as activities that have happened in the last 4 weeks with regard to those projects, and then I'll let each of the students sort of give their updates, ask questions, and just so that we use this time so that all the participants in the project feel like they have the direction they needed to further their work. So with the single-use plastics issue, and as a reminder, this was mapped to one of our climate action plan projects, which was to phase out single-use plastic bags from borough stores, and also to promote reusable bag education and programs. And to that end, we have 4 students, 2 from Dickinson, 2 from Widener Law School, Jackie Gregor and Lily Dickinson, and from Widener Law School, Jasmine Mutunga and Cassidy Mason. And I believe Lily will not be able to make it today. I think we, based on communications we've had in the last several weeks, we are at a stage where the draft surveys that have been developed by Jackie and Lily are, I will call them in final draft stage. And I don't know if Jackie is on. Okay, I don't see. I think Jackie may join us in a bit. She said she might be a few minutes late. My intent is to post both of those surveys. Again, one is targeted toward borough residents to solicit their views on single-use plastics, and the other is targeted for businesses in the borough area with regard to their utilization and accommodation of single-use plastics. And again, I will probably look to Tamala. I see you are on the call. I have you designated as the Climate Action Commission lead on this particular topic. We could look to use whatever file sharing is the most convenient. We should plan to have those drafts in place no later than November 1st. And I see Professor Douglas is there. Hopefully that's consistent, that timeline is consistent with your students meeting their requirements. Their response seemed to think that would be okay.
Yep, that's great on my end, Joel.
Great. Thanks, Maggie. I appreciate that. And I will, a few of us, including Councilor Landis, will be especially helping with focusing where some contacts to get the business surveys out so we get the most productive feedback on that. I will let Jackie jump in when she joins us, but in the meantime, let's see, we also have a draft ordinance. This is true of all 4 projects that Widener is working on. They all have submitted their draft ordinances this week, and so we have that for the single-use plastics. Thank you, Tamala, for posting that for comment. 1 November is going to be a very common deadline for a whole host of things coming up, it seems like. So we'd like everyone to get their input on that draft ordinance as well. Anything else we needed to talk about on this project? Hearing none, we'll give an update on the EV promotion. And again, this project is supporting one of our climate action plan projects is to promote adoption of electric vehicles by households and businesses to achieve 30% of the light duty fleet by 2035 and 90% by 2050, as well as promoting adoption of electric vehicles in commercial and industrial uses to achieve 15% of the medium and heavy duty fleet by 2035 and 45% by 2050. The two students working on that, Nuhan Abid and Jordan Dean, Nuhan and I have been in discussion with a focus, which really gets to an important aspect of moving this project forward, is to really develop a way of doing basically public communications in ways that convey sometimes complex ideas and maybe even misconceptions about the transition between electric vehicles from internal combustion engines, and the end goal was to develop some things we could eventually post on our social media that help residents maybe make some better comparable decisions and understand what some of the trade-offs are between electric vehicles and internal combustion engine powered vehicles. Nuhan, I did suggest one additional focus in your work. I sent that earlier today, but do you have any questions for us moving forward?
Not at present. I saw your thing from earlier, and yeah, I think that is definitely very much an important thing to add to the variables that I listened to earlier this week.
Okay, great. And certainly feel free to work, reach out to Stephanie Taylor, especially in view of, it sounds like the deliverables on your project will likely reside on somewhere on our site. So the closer you can connect with her to make sure we can accommodate and use the features there, the better. Do you have any other sort of mini deadlines or any other things we should put on our schedule to prepare for?
Right. I know you asked about a schedule about when you can begin reviewing material. I'm hoping that by mid-November, I should have the first draft of what I want the designs to look like. That's currently tentative. I'm in the process of discussing that with Professor Douglas about if that's a realistic timeline or not. But hopefully by then, I should have like some of these variables analyzed and put into sort of like the infographic style content that I want to put on the website.
Okay. As far as I'm concerned, unless someone feels different, I think that timeline is fine as long as it meets the timelines of your course, with the understanding that we are targeting the council workshop on December 21st for final sort of outbrief. So if that internal deadline works for you, that will be fine on our end. And
I can just chime in real quick, Joel, just for your information.
Mm-hmm.
All the students are going to be submitting drafts, at least as much as possible, drafts of their projects by that mid-November deadline that Nuhan mentioned. So I think that lines up well. And then the second day that you just said, could you say again the date that you're looking for final?
I said it hesitantly because that seems like a bit of an offset, but I had a note here that the final outbriefs would be at the December 21st workshop. I don't think we have one on I think that's a miss. Whatever the December workshop. Okay, well, that is a misprint, so strike what I said. So the final brief for council consideration would be at the December 1st workshop. So
Okay.
that
Okay.
sounds like that gives us maybe 10 days to 2 weeks to update anything between what your deadline is and what we need here.
Right. And I guess my one question about that, Joel, that December 1st, is that your goal for like a final version of the things that are associated with the students' projects? Or is that sort of an opportunity to get feedback?
That is sort of the last meeting we have before we're sort of handing this over to another class. But if the students are still willing to stay engaged and make any revisions, we would certainly still be open to that after December 1st.
Okay, great. So I'm just asking, just for your information, so the students are going to be doing kind of final presentations about their projects in my class on December 6th.
Okay.
And then their final project is due on December 17th, which is during our finals period. So so I'm just mentioning that so you are kind of aware of the schedule in the class and the dates that students are going to have in mind associated with the class.
That's really helpful. Thanks. And perhaps I'll leave it to you to decide how you want to use the December 1st update to council to update or modify anything they do, with the understanding that even though they may not come in person for subsequent updates, the work will have continued after December 1st. So if we can just make sure they're at some level of a draft by December 1st, that will be best.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I think that's aligned pretty well with where things are in the class too. Great.
If that changes, let us know. And I did get an update also from Jordan. Dean, I'll just, or I see Jordan's on. I'm happy to just let you update us on what you forwarded.
Yeah, so I've basically been working a little bit with, instead of, because I know Nuhan was doing a lot more with outreach and sort of like survey sort of information, I decided to instead focus on a lot of the infrastructural elements of, which I know we had talked about previously, but I was focusing on 3 lots, and this is something I kind of was wondering for you, like, about specific lots. The 3 lots that I was looking at were 2 where one was the Pomfret Street parking lot and the other one was the Pitt Street parking lot. I had a third one in mind, but I had seen after going and kind of looking at it that it was transformed into a Dickinson owned parking lot instead of a borough owned one. So something that I'm going to mean to ask a little bit later is just like, if you have any other suggestions for other parking lots that I can look at. But basically what I'm doing is I'm going to these parking lots and I'm taking data based on how often cars are parking there, what times of day they're usually there, and how many parking spaces and which parking spaces are taken up so that I can identify where charging stations could be located, which lot would be most effective to have a charging station, and when is the busiest time so that, I know, okay, this lot is more occupied in the evening, so this other lot might be a better place to have charging stations so people can charge it more often. So basically what I'm going to be looking at, I think, is basically just parking data and traffic data and flow sort of information. And if you have anything else that you would like me to look at, I'd be also open to talking to you about that as well.
Okay, yeah, that sounds very consistent with what I remember us talking a few weeks ago. I don't know, Susan, is there a better or an additional lot that you think might be most useful for Jordan to look at, or?
I was going to suggest that we coordinate Stacy Hamilton, who is our parking supervisor and charged with the parking program for the Borough of Carlisle, and put Jordan and Stacy in contact. Stacy can provide additional information on the number of leased spaces
Yeah.
per lot.
Yeah.
And what those lease structures look like. That will probably provide very relevant information for Jordan's research. There is also information that Stacy can provide with respect to whether we're interested or not in this particular topic as far as turnover of leases. We have the smart meter spaces downtown that we can look at as well. I don't know whether or not there has been any consideration to reserve spaces on street versus just in the lots themselves. Yeah. I would suggest the East Lowther Street South parking lot that's located behind North Hanover Grill as a potential lot for consideration for EV charging stations.
Is it? Would you say that's in lieu of or in addition to the other two stations you mentioned?
I would want to give it a little bit more thought, but I think the Pomfret Street is a good candidate. The East Lowther Street South parking lot is another, and we may want to look at the post office parking lot.
Okay. Jordan, when do you need us to make a decision on that? And we'll certainly put you in contact with Stacy Hamilton so that you have some of the lease data, some of this other additional data that would be important. Would next week be sufficient?
Yeah, next week would definitely work. I know that when I was at the Pitt Street lot, I did see a lot of lease discrepancy, so I was also thinking about that a little bit too.
Okay. We'll make sure you're connected, and we'll finalize. If you think you can do 3 lots, that's great. If you feel like 2 is sort of your limit or whatever, we can certainly promote the 2 or 3 that are most useful for us. So and to get back to the other comment Susan made is I think we'll be looking at a lot of in terms of the public parking and the metered options. I think that will be important and interesting. When we move into our formal agenda on the next meeting, I would expect that might be something under the transportation task force we'll look at when we possibly reorganize. But I think Jordan's work is absolutely focusing on that specific dynamic of lots as opposed to public street parking. I think we've got a good carve out. So great. Anything, Jordan, that you need from us to answer that would be helpful?
Other than what I mentioned, no. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Sounds good. Okay, so moving, or I think we see. Oh, Jackie, good to have you. We sort of briefly got folks updated on the fact that we have a couple surveys out to review. I don't know if you have anything specifically you want to update. I have noted that we definitely need to get our final inputs to you by 1 November. But other than that, I don't know if you have anything you want to share.
Sure, thank you. So I do have a revised version of that survey. I can put it in the chat if you'd like, or I can send it in an email after this. And any comments or feedback would be really helpful. Right now, it's asking residents about their attitudes towards single-use plastics, their willingness to change behaviors, trying to gauge their understanding of why this is such a problem, and then whether they'd like to see a plastic bag ban or fee at the end of this. And then there's some questions on what would the fee or ban look like, as well as getting some information on the demographics of survey participants. So let me know how best to follow up with the getting out the survey for comments, and I'd appreciate any suggestions.
Okay, good. Thanks. Good to know. Yeah, why don't you send me the latest revision? The last one I got, I think, was in Google Doc, or was in whatever Google's survey tool is. My only question is, for people, it's a little bit tough to comment on the actual form. I guess, yeah, that's what it's called, Google Forms. Can you put it in a format that is more sort of commentable or wordable? I don't know if Google allows you to do that easily. Just as I send it out for comments, it may be easier to make comments on something that's in a different form. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So would a document be would be helpful?
I think, yeah, if you can just transfer basically what you have in the Google form into a Word document, I think it'll be easier for people to comment on with your latest edition, and we'll make sure we get both of those sort of approvals back to both of you by November 1st. So I know Lily is traveling, so yeah. Anything else from us at this point?
That's all I have for now. I could definitely get the document to you by Monday latest. So.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. And let's see.
So I just had a comment.
Yeah, Tamala, go ahead.
As far as being able to work on a document and add comments, I actually think the Google Docs is the best. If you do a Word document, whatever changes you make are either be permanent or you'll need to color code it or whatever. But on Google Docs, you should just be able to type straight into the document, and it automatically becomes comments for Jackie and Lily to accept or not accept. And it will keep track of the different versions. It'll keep track of all edits that you can, like maybe something got deleted that you decided you wanted back in there. It's easy to go back and get, and it's easy
Tamala,
to work on.
I agree. I think leaving it in Google Docs. What I was trying to convey was I think the version I saw was in Google Forms, which is a little bit harder to update. So, as Tamala suggested, if you can convert the Google Forms into a Google Doc for commenting, I think that sets us up for success.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Does that sound right, Tamala?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay. The next topic was transitional zoning. I don't see actually anybody from Widener joining us today, which is fine. But Jack Kennelly and Shazi Raza was, we had actually met with them one time, Carla and Brenda and I, just to give them a little bit of guidance about the scope of what we were asking them to do. We have their draft ordinance. We have it due out to them by 1 November. And that's not directly related to any of our climate action plan objectives or goals, but was a recommendation that floated up both from council, actually primarily from council on a separate issue. Okay, Teresa Davis and Nayara Dennis, they have submitted their draft ordinance on an affordable housing ordinance. Again, we have a 1 November turnaround for them. And for all of these, the November 1 deadline is based on a final submission. They're required for their class on November 10th. So that gives them a reasonable amount of time. I'm hoping to attend those presentations. I think it will be on campus, at Widener's campus. Then we have Alexandra Parker, Gabriella Natter, who are working on an accessory dwelling ordinance. This is certainly directed towards some of our goals in increasing housing density, which, as we know, reduces energy intensity, which effectively improves our energy efficiency by having more efficient or greater housing density. They have submitted their ordinance. We will review it and have it back to them by 1 November. Anna Connolly we've met with her a couple times since our last sustainable working group meeting to try to narrow down a specific area for her to work on a green alley project. And I think we have a candidate area that's located on Church Street, as I believe, near the G-Man. And I don't know if you have any updates for us, Anna, but I do see you on the call.
Hi. Yeah. I haven't made like much progress since then, but so far I'm planning on like surveying the business opinions to make sure that they won't oppose it, because like for G-Man especially, it does butt up to them, and I want to make sure that like we respect their opinions. And I need to like gather some data on the durability of the green alleys and the cost of the green alleys, but once I have that, I will be filled with updates.
Okay, thanks. Do you need anything from us at this point?
I think I'm okay for now. If I need anything, I will definitely reach out. But as of now, I think I know my clear path, and I'm okay with what I have planned.
Okay. Well, you have the world's greatest engineer on the line right here. People are standing in line to ask him questions. So if one comes up in the next few minutes, I see Mark on the line. Okay. Kind of wrapping up our last item of the projects we have in the queue for our working group. This is actually an internal one where the borough is looking at the feasibility of pursuing a large scale solar PPA at public facilities. This would meet one of our climate action plan goals to transition to 100% renewable energy consumption at all borough facilities by 2050. Just to update folks, we have reviewed an initial feasibility. Richard Jude and Mark Malrich have reviewed a feasibility study from APPI, who did site surveys of all of our facilities. I know there was a couple follow-up questions from our staff that we would need before possibly releasing an RFP on this. But this is moving forward, and I don't know, Mark, if you have any updates at all. I think that's the last input I got from Richard.
I really don't have anything else to add to what you already said.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I will say that, you know, the first volley of potential capacity was fairly substantial. I don't think that comes as any surprise to anybody who's toured our facilities, but that reflects the fact that we have acreage, the relative flatness and the inherent electrical capacity that looks favorable for a potential project that could have substantial capacity and certainly helping to meet our goals. That was all of the, I think we're updated now on all of these projects. Does anybody have, anybody here in the room have anything? Okay. There are no questions. Anybody on the network or need any clarifications or have anything to add? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining and keeping us up to date, and we will adjourn and reconvene in about 25 minutes and commence our Climate Action Commission meeting. Everyone else, have a nice evening, and we'll be on pause for about 25 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.